You've seen a map of the United States 1,000 times, but what if I told you you've never actually looked at it? Zoom in and it stops making sense. This is the kind of geography school never taught you. Number 50. Look at the top left corner of the lower 48. Notice that small piece of land that hangs down below the Canadian border? That's Point Roberts, Washington. The US and Canada drew their border straight along the 49th parallel, but that clean division accidentally sliced off the tip of a peninsula. A small part stayed American, but it's cut off from the rest of Washington state. There's no direct land route to the mainland. The only way in or out by car is to go north into Canada and then re-enter the US near Blaine. That means around 1,200 Americans have to cross two international borders just to reach their own state. Utilities like water and electricity come from Canada, and for years, local kids rode a bus through another country just to get to school. Maps have edges, corners, and coastlines, but one spot claims something much harder to find. Number 49. If I told you that the heart of America is in a hayfield in Lebanon, would you believe me? Well, Lebanon, Kansas, that is. In a town of just about 200 people, there's no grand monument or tourist attraction. Most days, the gravel road sees more wind than traffic. The spot was calculated back in 1918 when surveyors cut out a cardboard outline of the contiguous United States and balanced it on a pin until it found perfect equilibrium. That became the geographic center of the country. Today, it's marked by little more than a plaque and a picnic table on the grass. Most places spend years trying to stand out. This one accidentally became unforgettable. Number 48. Some towns fight for years over what to call themselves. One of them simply gave up, though. In the mountains of western Colorado sits No Name. About 120 people live there, just east of Glenwood Springs. Most people assume a highway crew named it. The story goes that a worker left the exit sign blank, and the name stuck. It's a great story, but it's also wrong. Local historians have records of people living here in the 1870s. The spot was named long before the interstate, after No Name Creek and No Name Canyon. The road it's in is called No Name Lane. There's a No Name Bar and Grill. A whole town wears the placeholder with pride. Sometimes America's most famous landmarks begin with a problem nobody remembers. Number 47. Atlantic City is home to the world's longest boardwalk, and it began as a simple solution to an annoying problem. In 1870, sand from the beach kept getting tracked into nearby hotels, so a local hotel owner proposed building a wooden walkway along the shoreline. The first version was only 8 feet wide, and every winter crews dismantled it and stored the boards away until the next season. The idea proved so successful, though, that the boardwalk kept expanding. Today, it stretches roughly 4 miles through Atlantic City and reaches about 5.5 miles when connected with neighboring Ventnor. Not everything on a map and a flag still exists in the real world, though. Number 46. Take a look at the California state flag and you'll see a grizzly bear striding across the center. Look for that same bear in the wild, and you won't find one. California used to be home to thousands of grizzlies, but decades of hunting and trapping drove them to extinction. The last known bear was shot in Tulare County in 1922, and the last sighting came 2 years later in Sequoia National Park. Then, they were gone. California didn't name the grizzly its official state animal until 1953, nearly 30 years after it had vanished. So the state chose as its symbol a creature it had already lost. Even the bear on the flag, known as Monarch, spent his last years in a city zoo. The lines on a map look permanent, but nature tends to disagree. Number 45. The Mississippi River doesn't want to stay in one place. For thousands of years, it has constantly shifted, abandoning old channels and carving new ones, and that pressure is building again. Just above Baton Rouge, Louisiana, there's a smaller river called the Atchafalaya, and that offers a shorter, steeper route to the Gulf of Mexico. And water always takes the easiest path. That means the Mississippi should have switched course decades ago. If it did, cities like Baton Rouge and New Orleans could be left beside a stagnant backwater. The local economy would collapse. All it takes is a major flood to trigger that change. The only thing holding it back is the old river control structure, a concrete system built by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to keep the river in place. Some of America's biggest landmarks are never seen. Number 44. Some of the most dramatic peaks on the East Coast are hidden underwater. A chain of dead volcanoes stretches for more than 1,000 miles from New England toward Bermuda. The oldest, bare seamount, is covered in corals that are thousands of years old, while strange deep-sea creatures drift through the cold waters around it. Scientists can only explore these peaks with robotic submarines. There are more detailed maps of Mars than this underwater range. The chain formed millions of years ago as North America drifted over a deep mantle hotspot, leaving behind a trail of mountains that have remained hidden under the Atlantic ever since. When it comes to scale, some US counties decide to go supersized. Number 43. San Bernardino County is anything but ordinary. It covers more than 20,000 square miles. That makes it bigger than 9 US states. You could put any one of Rhode Island, Delaware, Connecticut, Hawaii, New Jersey, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Maryland, and Vermont inside its borders, and still have room to spare. It stretches from the edge of Los Angeles to the Nevada line. In some areas, a sheriff's deputy might travel 100 miles to respond to a single call. Some of the country's biggest wonders stay hidden simply because they're too far away. Number 42. Most people don't know America's biggest rainforest. It's the Tongass, way up in southeast Alaska. The forest itself covers about 17 million acres. Its sheer scale is difficult to grasp. You could fit Switzerland or Denmark inside its boundaries. For decades, the Tongass has been at the center of a bitter fight. Loggers see a source of valuable old-growth timber, while conservationists argue that once these trees are gone, they can never truly be replaced. Some of them were around when Columbus sailed to America. A single decision can shape a nation for centuries. This one almost went the other way. Number 41. It seems like Washington, D.C. was always destined to be the nation's capital. But after the Civil War, there was a serious campaign to move it. The reason behind it is simple. A capital on the Far East Coast made less sense for a country expanding rapidly westward. Many believed the seat of government should move closer to the center. So, in 1869, supporters gathered in St. Louis and pitched it as the ideal replacement. But by then, Washington had become too established. The government had poured money into federal buildings, including the newly completed Capitol Dome. Eastern politicians weren't exactly keen on abandoning them. The idea came back time and again, but it always met the same fate. Too much had been built, too much power, so the capital stayed exactly where it was. History doesn't always happen where you'd expect. Sometimes it even starts in a brownstone. Number 40. 1520 Sedgwick Avenue holds a special place in music history. On August 11, 1973, a teenager named Clive Campbell, or DJ Kool Herc, was throwing a back-to-school party. While DJing, he noticed that people went wild during the short drum breaks in songs. So he started stretching those breaks out, using 2 copies of the same record to loop them. Without realizing it, hip-hop was born. No one had any idea they were witnessing the start of something special. From that one Bronx address, a whole culture spread across the planet. One spot on the map changed music forever. And the map has a way of playing tricks with whole states, too. Number 39. Michigan is surrounded by Canada. North, east, south, and west, everywhere you look, there's Canada. It sounds impossible, but it's all down to the Great Lakes. Michigan's 2 peninsulas wrap around the water, and Canadian land ends up sitting on almost every side of it. That's not the weird part, though. Drive straight south out of downtown Detroit, and you don't go deeper into the US. You cross the river into Windsor, Ontario. In other words, Detroit actually sits north of Canada. No other state is boxed in quite like that. Every strange shape on a map has a story. This one has a very stubborn author. Number 38. Missouri has a strange little foot hanging off its southern edge, dropping down into what should be Arkansas. People call it the boot heel, and it exists because of one stubborn landowner, John Hardiman Walker. When Missouri's borders were being drawn in the early 1800s, he pushed hard to make sure his land stayed inside the state. He lobbied Congress until the boundary was bent south just to include it. One man's determination can shape an entire map. And some landmarks become so famous, no one realizes it's actually a lie. Number 37. Everyone thinks that the Grand Canyon is the deepest point in the US. Hell's Canyon runs right along the Idaho and Oregon border, carved out by the Snake River over millions of years. It drops nearly 8,000 feet from the rim to the river, and that's about 2,000 feet deeper than the Grand Canyon. But the most dramatic landscapes aren't always the ones you can see. Number 36. At first glance, Monterey Bay in California looks calm and serene. But underneath the waves, there is a canyon a full mile deep. Monterey Canyon cuts almost 100 miles across the seafloor and drops straight down into total darkness. The canyon is constantly moving thanks to regular underwater landslides that reshape the seafloor every few months. Anything caught in one can be pulled out into the deep. Some numbers sound fake until you see the proof. Number 35. Kentucky is home to about 4.5 million people. It also holds about 16 million barrels of aging bourbon. That works out to more than 3 barrels for every resident. Much of it sits in massive wooden rick houses, where entire floors are stacked ceiling high with barrels from distilleries like Jim Beam and Maker's Mark. These warehouses stretch across the state, turning small rural areas into a global industry that contributes around $9 billion a year to the state economy. And on still nights near a rick house, you can actually smell the whiskey evaporating into the air, known as the angel's share. Most places adapt to geography. This place adapted the clock instead. Number 34. Nevada runs on Pacific time, except for one little town. West Wendover sits up against the Utah line and sets its clocks to Mountain Time. That puts it a full hour ahead of the rest of Nevada. The reason is money. West Wendover is a casino town out in the empty desert. Almost all its gamblers come from Salt Lake City across the border in Utah. But for years, being an hour behind its main customers created constant problems. Closing times, bus schedules, and peak gambling hours never quite lined up. So, in 1999, the town asked to switch time zones so it would match its customers. And it got approved. Now, West Wendover is a gambling town and a state curiosity. But some pieces of American history happen in the most insignificant ways. Number 33. The Stars and Stripes is pretty iconic. But did you know the current 50 Stars started life as a school project? In 1958, 17-year-old Robert G. Heft submitted the design as part of a history assignment, and he got a B-. The teacher pointed out that there were only 48 states at the time, but Robert believed in his flag. His teacher told him if the flag was accepted by Congress, then he'd get an A. So, Robert had a new project. He mailed his flag to the local senator and started a campaign for it to be accepted. 2 years later, Alaska and Hawaii had become states. History had caught up with the design, and Robert Heft got his A. Today, the 50-star flag is the longest-serving version in the nation's history. Not bad for a school project. Some changes take years to notice. Others arrive all at once. Number 32. In 1932, an entire town woke up in a different state. The town was Texhoma, half Texas, half Oklahoma. Its name literally combines both states. For years, the border ran straight through the town. Then, a new survey revealed the line was wrong. So, overnight, the border moved south. Suddenly, the bank, post office, and most businesses were in a completely different state. Even today, one school district serves both sides. School children can walk from an Oklahoma classroom to a Texas ball field, crossing a state line without even noticing. Number 31. The US does not have an official language. That's because Congress didn't want to alienate early citizens who spoke German, Dutch, or French. English was just the common language. It stayed that way until March 1st, 2025, when President Donald Trump signed an executive order stating English was now the official language of the United States. While it's not law, federal agencies need to use English in their daily activities. Some of the most baffling American stories aren't man-made at all, though. Number 30. In northeast Utah, the Green River doesn't care about the terrain. Instead of flowing around the Uinta Mountains, it cuts straight through them. For years, nobody knew how. Then, in early 2026, researchers solved the mystery. A dense mass of rock sank into the earth deep underground and dragged the mountains down with it. The river stayed on its original course, carving the same path the entire time. Then, the peaks rose back up around it. Sometimes geology doesn't need millennia to change a landscape. It can just do it in days. Number 29. Eastern Washington's channeled scablands look like another planet. Most of the region is farmland, but here, it's barren wasteland. Cliffs drop hundreds of feet. Giant waterfalls run dry. In fact, one was larger than Niagara Falls. The entire area is scarred with arid flood channels, coulees, and cataracts. For decades, geologists insisted it formed slowly. One scientist, J. Harlan Bretz, disagreed. He argued that a catastrophic flood created everything at once, and he was right. At the end of the last ice age, a massive lake burst through its ice dam over and over again. Huge walls of water raced across the region, stripping away soil and exposing bare rock in a matter of days. Decades later, Bretz was awarded the Penrose Medal, geology's highest honor, 2 years before he died at age 98. Sometimes the most famous version of history, though, is also the least accurate. Number 28. Hollywood portrays cowboys as solitary figures drifting across the plains. The real story, though, is much more interesting. After the Civil War, cattle drives surged north from Texas toward the railroads. On many of those drives, as many as 1 in 4 cowboys was black. Some of them had been born into slavery and became the finest horsemen on the plains. At the height of the drives, between 5,000 to 9,000 black cowboys worked on the range, wrangling cattle. A black cowboy named Bill Pickett invented the rodeo technique known as steer wrestling, which is still performed to this day. He was also the first black cowboy star to appear in movies during the 1920s. Another, Bass Reeves, escaped slavery and became a deputy U.S. Marshal. Not every place in the U.S. is carefully named. Some towns are born when everyone gives up. Number 27. There is a town in North Carolina called Wynot, and the name came from pure frustration. When locals gathered to name the town, every suggestion sparked another argument. Hours passed and nobody could agree. Eventually, one exhausted resident threw up his hands and said, "Why not just call it Wynot?" The room agreed, and that was that. And visitors regularly stopped to photograph the town sign before continuing toward nearby Erect, North Carolina. Sometimes the best town names happen by accident. The US is known for its love of fast food. That's why this next entry is so surprising. Number 26. McDonald's is one of the most recognizable brands in the world. So much so, it feels like it's on every street corner. There are more than 13,000 locations nationwide, but US libraries still outnumber them, with over 17,000 branches and bookmobiles. For every set of golden arches, there's more than one library. And in some communities, they're more than just places to pick up a book. Some lend tools, seeds, fishing rods, and telescopes. You don't get that in a Happy Meal. Any ideas what the most popular city name in the US is? Let's find out together. Number 25. If you decided to visit every city in the US called Washington, it would take you almost 3 months. With 88 Washingtons nationwide, it's by far the most common city name in America. What started as a patriotic tribute turned into a nationwide trend, and it never really stopped. In second place is Springfield with 41 cities. So more than 200 years later, George Washington continues to shape America. Some places earn their name through history. Others earn it through attitude. Number 24. To reach Alma, Colorado, you have to climb. At almost 10,600 feet above sea level, Alma, Colorado is the highest incorporated town in America. About 300 people live there year-round, dealing with thin air and brutal winters. The main street sits higher than the summit of Mount Mitchell, the tallest mountain east of the Mississippi River by nearly 4,000 feet. The local bar even claims to be the highest bar in America, where visitors quickly learn that altitude can make one beer feel like 3. Every town starts somewhere. This next one started with a gamble. Number 23. Show Low, Arizona got its name from a high-stakes card game. 2 ranchers had a falling out and couldn't decide who got the ranch. Instead of fighting in court, they settled it with a single draw. The ranch would go to whoever pulled the lowest card. One man flipped over the 2 of clubs and won everything. The loser rode away, and the winning hand gave the future town its name. Today, the main road is called Deuce of Clubs, and the 2 of Clubs appears on signs throughout town. They say life finds a way, and this next location proves it. Number 22. In the Nevada desert, a narrow crack in the rock leads to a deep, flooded cavern called Devil's Hole. And there's one resident living there, the Devil's Hole pupfish. These fish are incredibly rare and found nowhere else on Earth. The entire species depends on a thin sliver of sunlit water along the edge of the abyss. Today, only a population of roughly 200 remains, and extreme climate changes are putting the shoal at risk of extinction. Most communities adapt to the ground beneath them. One decided it was easier to move. Number 21. In the early 1900s, miners discovered some of the richest iron ore on Earth directly beneath the town of Hibbing, Minnesota. It was such a valuable discovery they had to get it. So the town moved. Workers lifted homes, hotels, and even schools onto rollers. Horses and steam engines dragged entire buildings nearly 2 miles to a new location. Then, miners dug up the old town site. The move took years, but many of those buildings still stand today. The Ice Age reshaped the continent. Somehow, one patch slipped through untouched. Number 20. During the last Ice Age, glaciers tore through much of the upper Midwest, but they missed one region entirely. Known as the Driftless area, this pocket of land stretches across parts of Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, and Illinois. While glaciers flattened the surrounding landscape, the ice split apart and flowed around it. Steep bluffs replace flat farmland. Deep valleys cut through the hills. Cold trout streams, hidden caves, and limestone springs are scattered across the area. It's a huge contrast from the cornfields that surround it. Some places in the US take their name literally. Number 19. Welcome to Death's Door. A narrow strait connects Green Bay to Lake Michigan, and it's full of strong currents and hidden reefs. Add in sudden storms, and the passage quickly became a graveyard for ships. French sailors feared it so much they named it Port de Mort, or the Door of Death. Today, lighthouses guard the crossing, but shipwrecks still lie beneath the waves. You should never judge things by appearance. The next entry certainly proves that. Number 18. The Great Dismal Swamp straddles Virginia and North Carolina, and deep inside sits Lake Drummond, a natural lake filled with dark, tea-colored water. That murky water turned out to be valuable. On wooden sailing ships, water often spoiled within weeks, but water taken from this swamp stayed fresh for months. Natural tannins from cypress and juniper trees slowed any bacterial growth, so the swamp became a reliable source of drinking water for long voyages. Later, George Washington tried to drain it for farmland, and escaped slaves built communities on its isolated islands. A few places feel like nature accidentally mixed up the instructions. Number 17. Near Buffalo, New York, a small waterfall is concealing an eternal flame. Natural gas seeps through cracks in the rock and feeds a fire tucked inside a natural alcove. The flame is only a few inches tall, but it burns just feet from flowing water. Scientists are still puzzled by it, as the surrounding rock is cooler than most places where natural flames occur. The flame does go out occasionally, and when it does, passing hikers will relight it. Think you know how many Great Lakes there are? Think again. Number 16. For 18 days in 1998, the United States officially had 6 Great Lakes. Lake Champlain in Vermont earned the title after a senator slipped a provision into a federal bill. President Clinton signed it into law, and suddenly the famous Great Lakes had a new member. The backlash was immediate. Champlain was far smaller than any of the existing 5, and lawmakers from the Midwest weren't happy about sharing the club. Just 18 days later, Congress reversed the decision. Lake Champlain lost its status, but Vermont kept the federal funding that came with it. So, at least there was a bonus. History is full of dramatic moments. This story is about what happened after everyone stopped paying attention. Number 15. In 1861, a tiny New York community made a big decision. Town Line voted to leave the United States and support the Confederacy. It was a move that made little sense. The town sat near Buffalo, roughly 1,000 miles from the South. As the war raged on, people were distracted by the country tearing itself apart. So everyone forgot about their allegiance. Decades passed, and Town Line never officially rejoined the Union. It was only 85 years later, in 1946, that someone asked the question. President Truman even sent a letter encouraging residents to settle it. So, townsfolk voted and decided to rejoin. Sometimes a problem can be thousands of years in the making. Number 14. Water flows into Utah's Great Salt Lake and doesn't flow out. so every river that drains into it leaves behind minerals, and since the lake has no outlet to the ocean, those minerals never escape. The water evaporates, but the salt stays. Over thousands of years, the lake became far saltier than the sea. Swimmers can bob up and down like corks. Almost nothing survives there, except brine shrimp. Then there's the railroad causeway that slices the lake in half. Because the two sides barely mix, one often appears blue-green while the other turns bright pink. But all those minerals come with a huge problem. By the mid-2020s, the lake had shrunk to record lows. Exposed lakebed began sending arsenic-laced dust toward Salt Lake City, forcing officials to monitor it like a weather threat. With mineral extraction ramping up, the conditions are only gonna get worse. Sometimes, nature likes to mix things up, though. Number 13. Mono Lake, California built a forest out of stone. Mineral-rich springs bubble up through the lakebed, creating strange limestone towers called tufa. For centuries, they grew beneath the surface, out of sight. Then Los Angeles diverted the streams feeding the lake. As water levels fell, the towers emerged, creating an entire stone forest. Eventually, a court ordered Los Angeles to reduce its water diversions, and the lake began rising again. Most catastrophes arrive in a single day, but this next one took generations. Number 12. A century ago, Holland Island was a thriving community in Maryland's Chesapeake Bay. With almost 360 residents, it had everything they needed: homes, stores, a church, a school, and a baseball team. Today, it's almost gone. The island sat on soft mud and clay, and the bay steadily consumed it. Families began floating their wooden houses to the mainland one by one as the town shrank. One house held out longer than the rest. Its owner surrounded it with sandbags to keep the water out. Then in 2010, the last house on Holland Island collapsed into the bay. At low tide, a few cracked gravestones still rise from the water where the churchyard once stood. Few mysteries are more frustrating than evidence without an explanation. Number 11. At Racetrack Playa in Death Valley, heavy rocks slide across the desert by themselves, leaving long winding trails in their wake. Some of them weigh hundreds of pounds, but they still glide effortlessly across the dry mud. For decades, nobody could explain it. There were no footprints, no pranksters, just rocks moving across an empty lakebed. People blamed strong winds, magnetic forces, even aliens. Then, in 2014, scientists caught it happening. After rain, thin sheets of ice form overnight. By morning, the ice breaks apart and floats across the slick mud. Even a slight breeze can push it, and the rocks go along with it too. Next up, the smallest communities often come with a horror story. Number 10. Kalawao County, Hawaii has fewer than 100 residents today. For over a century, that wasn't a choice, and nobody was allowed to leave. For more than a century, it served as a leper colony. Patients were taken from their families and sent here. A Belgian priest named Father Damien came to care for the patients. He stayed for years before contracting the disease himself and eventually died there. More than a century later, he was canonized as a saint. When a city needs something, it'll do everything to get it. Number 9. Back in 1938, Massachusetts erased 4 towns from the map: Dana, Enfield, Greenwich, and Prescott, all gone. Boston needed more water, so the state flooded an entire valley to create the Quabbin Reservoir. Families were forced to leave homes their ancestors had built. Buildings were demolished and cemeteries were dug up. Even the dead had to relocate. Then the valley was sealed and allowed to fill. Today, the reservoir supplies drinking water to millions around Boston, and during especially dry years, old roads and stone foundations are visible. Sometimes the best way to understand the map is to look down on it. Number 8. Most people picture Georgia as rolling farmland and peach orchards. Then they see Brasstown bald. At nearly 4,800 feet, it's the highest point in the state. On a clear day, you can see 4 states at once: Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, and South Carolina. Sometimes people can spot Atlanta almost 80 miles away. Appearances can be deceiving, and in this next case, very deceiving. Number 7. Pando looks like a forest, but it isn't. Spread across roughly 100 acres of Utah hillside are around 47,000 quaking aspens. Every trunk is genetically identical and connected to a single underground root system. The massive forest is one living organism. Scientists believe its roots have survived for thousands of years. By weight, it may be the heaviest living thing on Earth, heavier than a blue whale or a giant sequoia, but it's under threat. Deer, drought, and disease are slowly wearing it down. This has led to conservation efforts and the creation of protected areas, where young shoots are growing again. Not everything survives an ice age. A few things just refuse to leave. Number 6. Virginia's highest mountain contains a lost forest. Near the summit of Mount Rogers, there is a section of spruce and fir trees. It's the kind of woodland you'd expect to find hundreds of miles north in Canada. It's a relic from the Ice Age. When glaciers retreated, most of these cold-loving forests vanished from the south. But Mount Rogers stayed cool enough to preserve a small surviving patch. Today, hikers on the Appalachian Trail climb out of hardwood forests and suddenly find themselves surrounded by trees that resemble a northern wilderness. Most towns and cities are designed for commerce, traffic, or growth. This one had a very different goal. Number 5. Carefree Arizona takes its name seriously. Its streets include Easy Street, Ho-Hum Road, and Nonchalant Avenue. The entire town was designed around slowing down. Developers built it in the 1950s as a retreat from city life, and the theme stuck. Giving directions here sounds like a joke. Turn left on Easy Street, then right on Tranquil Trail. Except that's actually the route. That's not the only notable feature either. The town center has one of the largest sundials in the Western Hemisphere. Every now and then, one mistake can set off a chain reaction nobody could have predicted. Number 4. In 1980, an oil drilling crew punched through the bottom of Lake Peigneur in Louisiana and uncovered a salt mine. The moment the drill broke through, the lake began draining. A giant whirlpool formed and swallowed the drilling rig, then barges, then trees, and part of a nearby island. A canal even reversed direction and rushed backward into the growing hole. For a brief moment, the flow created the tallest waterfall in Louisiana. Luckily, no one died. When the chaos ended, Lake Peigneur had become the deepest lake in the state. Some achievements, though, come with an asterisk next to them. Number 3. The highest points in most states are at the top of a mountain. Apart from Connecticut. Its highest point sits partway up the slope of Mount Frisell. The actual summit lies just across the border in Massachusetts. So Connecticut's highest elevation belongs to somebody else's mountain. It's a little like bragging about owning the tallest building in town when you only own the 3rd floor. Every culture has stories and legends, and sometimes they're grounded in truth. Number 2. For generations, native peoples told a story about a natural bridge spanning the Columbia River. People could supposedly walk across the river on dry land. To many, it sounded like a myth. Then, geologists discovered evidence of a massive landslide that had once blocked the river completely. The debris formed a natural dam so large that people were able to cross the Columbia on foot. Eventually, the river broke through and reclaimed its channel, and the bridge vanished. But the memory remains. Today, a steel bridge stands at almost the exact same location. Despite living in a connected world, there is still one place where the modern world disappears. Number 1. The most remote location in the lower 48 states lies deep inside Yellowstone. But getting there isn't easy. The area known as the Thoroughfare is the point farthest from any road in America. Reaching it requires a hike of more than 20 miles through wilderness. There's no cell signal or ranger stations, and there's also no easy way out. The route crosses rivers, open meadows, dense forests, and some of the highest concentrations of grizzly bears in the country. Park rangers need to reach it on horseback, and the journey takes 2 full days. In a nation connected by highways, airports, and cell towers, the Thoroughfare remains something rare, a place where you really are on your own. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. Really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on Map Pack.